there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. In this episode, my guest is Brad Smith, founder of Stellar Insight Inc. Brad has spent over 20 years helping companies pursue growth and excellence through coaching, consulting, facilitation, and strategic planning. He's the co-author of Explosive Business Growth Strategies, GANE Ontario, and he's also a host of Visionary Leaders Mind podcast. We had a very interesting discussion on many different topics around the business leadership. Brad shared very interesting and practical perspectives on both business leadership and business growth. He also talks about some of the opportunities and challenges business leaders are dealing with the recent disruption. And he outlines some of the strategies and very practical approach to deal with some of these challenges. So if you like this content, don't forget to send me your feedback and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, please welcome Brad Smith. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is someone very special from far away, Brad Smith. Brad, thank you so much for your time and welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
Okay. Brad, walk us through what do you see for the last couple of years. We've gone through so many changes, so many disruptions. Where you see some of those challenges that people you're dealing with, they come across, and how they're dealing with some of those challenges.
Quite honestly, the disruptions have been a destabilization of what we're comfortable with, but that just makes us learn harder. Mm-hmm. So how people are dealing with it is they're opening up, they're becoming more aware, and they're learning harder. And that's it. That's the biggest changes. And those people that are willing to learn hard and pay attention or be aware, right? And talk about it well or deeply in their organization, those are the ones that move the fastest. And those have always been the ones that have moved the fastest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely, business leaders got a challenge. Not only they got to learn, they got to train your team with them as well, right? So they got to bring along everybody with the vision, whatever they're thinking through, right? So how big is that challenge that, you can pivot, you can learn very, very quickly, but now you got a team of people that you got to bring along with you.
Well, if you don't hire learners, you're in trouble. If you hire people that like things just the same every year, you're already in trouble. So the hiring process has to change. And then you train and start a dialogue with, first of all, I have a new client, and my question to him is, how long have you been in business, right? How many years and how many people have you got on your, in this particular case, he needs to modify his sales team. He says, I've got 10 people. And I said, how do you inspire them? And he stopped dead. He didn't know. So he has to learn how to inspire his people. And he has to also, his homework was, I want you to have an individual conversation with each one of them and ask them what motivates them and why they show up and how they get inspired. That dialogue with each one of them will help him then organize people and get them lined up. If you don't have a motivation that's internal, that's also lined up with the company and the individuals that work for you, you're in trouble already. So ask.
Did that motivation change a little bit for some people during this COVID? I see a lot of people, when I interview very young people ongoing basis. Some are get motivated by, hey, can I work from home or can I work in a hybrid environment? We didn't have that a few years back. So did that motivation for some of the people to be successful change over the last few years?
What it's allowed them to do is say, okay, my home life is important. The hour a day I spend traveling back and forth to work, which is pretty normal for big cities. Like, do I want to do that? And can I be just as effective or can I be more effective? Right? Those are for the people that are motivated. For the people that are not motivated, they get to hide out at home. So you have to have a way to engage them. But we lose things, and they need to be reminded. We lose things when we don't have a community. We're gregarious beings. We're built for a tribe, and a business is part of a tribe process.
Mm-hmm. But filtering that out, what kind of motivation is that? Is it just a motivation to stay home and not to put efforts in, or somebody simply just looking for that's going to drive them but working from home, right? So that's where the challenge comes in. I make a lot of mistakes in this area as well. but definitely I think that people, you just got to understand what the motivation is, and bring some sort of have a way of somebody even. One thing I think about is how do you measure that, their success as well. Can you give them a path to where they are today, and they can measure their own success, and then they'd be motivated by whatever the success is?
Well, there has to be a measurement system, right? I was a chemist, so you measure everything, right? And if you have a position with nothing to deliver, you don't have a need for that person. So if they have something they have to do, something they have to accomplish, there's something there to measure. Even if it's HR, right? Even if it's human resources, there's something there that can be measured, and the measurement then can be held accountable to. They have to do that. If someone's not self-accountable, then they're working for someone else.
Yeah. Hey, I was talking to a couple of my colleagues on this area. Many years ago, the way we measure productivity was by time. Somebody comes in 8 to 5. We have them for 8 hours. We thought they are being successful because they've been in a company for that many hours. But that option is not available anymore for the last few years, right? So now you got to find a different way of measure that people's productivity or measure their engagement. So where you see some of the struggle, does that mean people have to come up with a new ways of measuring it? How do they measure? Is it a task-based, activity-based, or simply just not a time-based anymore, right?
The mistake we made was that it was time-based. People work so hard, right? If you look at the statistics, people do 80% of the work and then stop, right? They get 8%. They're not full. If they're not inspired, they're not full. So inspiring people and get their internal energy, if you would, that's an organization. That's how you grow a company. It's like, I'm inspired. How do you inspire yourself? So my question to your listeners is, first, start with, do you self-inspire? Do you self-inspire? And then ask that question of everybody in your organization. What's important to you, and how do you line that up with what you have to accomplish? Because if you don't have results, if you don't have tasks and results to produce, then you don't have a position. Look at that everywhere in your company.
Yeah, how many? It's a much harder than easier. I talked to a lot of business owners and business leaders. When I ask them, hey, what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals are? And you get a blank stare sometime, right? They just operational. You don't. So when you, as a business leader, you don't have your goal defined, you don't know what you're chasing, what are you trying to accomplish? How can you inspire other people around you that, what do you want them to achieve?
Right. So I have an exercise that I give my clients. First, in the first two conversations, what do you have on your plate that you have no business doing? So go through everything you do in a month, rank it down for the number of hours you put into it, and then break off the things where I hate doing this and I have no business doing this, or I love doing this, but I still have no business doing it. Who am I going to delegate to? Then you build out a delegation list. That's your hiring list. And that's how you build out your organization. One group of delegation skills, lists at a time.
I see. So simply saying, make a list of items that you don't want to be doing, and then move that to somebody else, right? Well,
make a list of the things that you can delegate to someone else for a quarter or a tenth of what you're worth each hour, right?
Yeah.
Figure out what you're worth, right? And then have someone else do it. If you can get it done, if you can get it done for 15 or 25 bucks an hour, and you're $400 an hour, or 1,000, whatever, right? Get it off your plate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know a lot of colleagues, they also suffer that it's not going to be done right, but you rather lose a little bit of perfection out of that and still get it done from somebody else than instead of you spending time on it, right?
Right. Well, I put it this way: if you have children, do you still tie their shoes for them? Right? If you don't tie their shoes for them, then somewhere along the line you trained them well enough to get out of that the results you wanted. It's not perfectionism, it's training that's the issue.
Very interesting. So where are some of the opportunities, people working from home, Brad, for the last few years, especially for business leaders? building team is one of the critical element. They definitely got to build a team, but what are the other opportunities that you see that, hey, if somebody can tap into that, they can definitely grow their companies. We all got to grow revenues. We got to grow the companies back where they were before. I think everybody's trying to come up with the plans, their own plans, what they want to do. So where do you see some of those opportunities for business leaders?
Write down all the things that frustrate you, right? If you don't have enough time, that means you delegate more, right?
Yeah.
If you're working too hard and you're frustrated with the work you're doing, then you need to delegate. So delegate is the first skill I make sure my clients have. If they don't have it, then I back up and say, be aware of your situation. So be aware of your situation, learn how to delegate, and then balance it with, of course, can you afford the new person, right? If you can, then you're looking for, and here's the list here. When you're hiring, hire for first, character, right? Everybody goes down through the list and says, what's the set of skills I want? That's the third thing on the list. What are the results first? How do you measure them, right? Then after the measurements and the results, then what are the tasks that need to be done? Then after the tasks that need to be done, what are the skills? That follows then with what is the character traits that make a good, let's say, bookkeeper, right? That's someone that's attention to detail, right? If someone needs a different set of skills, then you look for character traits that are naturally that way, right? If someone's meticulous, fine. If they're, not good with people, don't put them on the front line with humans.
Yeah.
So those then builds out your organization. Then you have capacity issues, right? You balance sales and capacity, you grow into that. There's always opportunities for people. I looked up recently, how do you measure the gross domestic product and the economic well-being of a country, right? So it's gross domestic product divided by the number of citizens. How do you grow an economy? Money, talent, education, make sure your people know what they're doing, right? And then behind that, research and development. And that's how you grow a country. Basically.
Amazing. Good stuff. Interesting. So when you're looking for characters, you mentioned that, I think that's a critical piece. A lot of business owners, we all come from a technical trades, we were good at something. We started building a businesses. This is not a core area of our competency. Can you verify, how do you measure, is there a way you can avoid some of the mistakes when you make mistakes in this area? What can you do to verify that, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and this person has those things?
How do you stay out of the ditch, right? Right?
Yeah.
So, well, other than hiring me, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like my main job is make sure I see the ditch and all the holes in it, but way before my clients do. But how you do that is, what are the things you don't know about business? Write them down, right? If you're good at money, well, are you also good at sales? And the number of people that are good at money are not good at sales. It's like few that are good at both, right? You can't be good at both. You can't be good at all the things that a company takes. So grow into it as you can financially, but pay attention to what do you love to do and you're very good at it, or what do you think you're good at, right?
Yeah.
Measure your own results. What results you have? Have you been able to double your growth rate in the last year? Have you gone from 15% to 30% growth in a year, measured by top line and bottom line, both, right? So you can buy market share, but you give up profit. That's not good. So growth happens by watching what's possible and inventing the new process.
I see. So the top line you're measuring, but what are you measuring the bottom line for? Just to see that you're not increasing that bottom line the same as the top line, or are you looking for efficiencies or product or room to improve on that?
You want to make sure if I grow, let's put it this way, if I add a zero to the top line revenue, I want to make sure that I've added a zero to the bottom line revenue, right? I had a client that I took from what was it, 3.5 million to 13 million, 12.9 million in a 3-year period. And because of all the things we'd done in the company and what he'd learned from me, right? He went the following year from 12.9 to 13.2 million, but he increased his profit by a factor of 5. He multiplied his profit by 5. And that's because he paid attention. It wasn't cutting corners, right? It was, which is only a short-term process. You make sure your efficiencies are there, but that's again making sure your processes are running right.
I see. So when you're measuring those, the bottom line as well, so you making sure that you're building all the efficiencies, because over the time, if you're scaling company, that should not increase similar to the company, right? It gotta give you the profit margin, I guess, if you're not growing the bottom line.
Well, the evolution of, let's say, from 10 million to 30 million, 10 million to 50 million, right? That's a whole magnitude difference, right? So from 50 million to 100 million, that's another magnitude. And everything tweaks and changes in the process. There will be ups and downs in that process where you have to spend money to make money, right? Don't spend money to make money, you'll stop growing. So you pay attention to, what do I invest in? And that's the thought. What do I invest in order to make sure that my company grows faster and better than it's been in the last 2, 5, 10 years, right?
Are you solving different problems at the 5 million or 10 million or 15 million, Brad, as you scale the company? Is there a different problem you're solving and need a different skill set?
Well, it's like this. There's only 6 parts to a business, right? Okay. And I just wrote a chapter on that for a book that's coming out. It's like there's only 6 parts to a business. And every time you go up a spiral of growth, you touch every one of them. Okay? Marketing, sales, production, finance, research and development, people, right? All of those things get touched in a spiral, and you will go back through every time you turn around, and every time you grow. I don't care whether it's 15 to 20%, 20 to 50%, whatever. Every time you grow through a spiral circle, you'll touch them again, every one. So don't think it'll be different stuff. It's all the same stuff repeatedly, but it's not the same thing, right? So if I'm teaching my company, and that's your job is to teach the company how to grow.
Got it. So those 6 things, I want to make sure that I get it right. So sales, marketing, sales
and marketing are so radically different. It takes different human beings to do that. I separate them out because of the type of human it takes. Is it still customer outreach and engagement? Yes, both, right? But it goes from broadcast information in the marketing to the individual conversation in the sales process. So I separate them out, right? Okay. Then you've got production, and your capacity growth has to match the evolution and growth of the number of clients you have, or customers, right? So marketing, sales, production, finance, all the time. You never let go of that, right? And then you've got the research and development, and always constantly you're working with the people, both the new hiring and the people you've got to inspire them. And your job as the top kind of viewer of the company is to design the culture of the company. Do you want to hire people that aren't ethical and honest? No, ever, right?
Yeah.
So you're working on what are the core responsibilities and the core values you want in yourself and you want in your company.
Wow. Very interesting. So yeah, now I'm making the notes as we go through those very important areas. So where does a training like, you're not going to hire 100%. You're not going to have always 100% what you're trying to do in those departments. Where does the training comes in? Because you're going to keep pushing it to where it should be, where you want it to be, instead of where it's right now. So how does the training play a role in that, building the culture, what you just mentioned, building that people to the level where you need to be, and all those 6 areas you mentioned that you got to keep tweaking that stuff?
Well, I will put it this way. If you've got a large enough company, you meet with them at least monthly. Okay. I worked at Hewlett Packard. We met on a monthly basis as a whole division, right? And then on a quarterly basis, we had that. At that time, I was honored to have the president and then the founder of the company to show up and talk to us. So regular conversations. It's like that's part of the repetition of the process of training. I had an assistant that worked over in the Philippines. I talked to her every day for at least half an hour. That was part of my input to her until she got to the place where she knew it so well, and she knew what I wanted, that it took me 5-10 minutes to talk to her. That was it. We could even skip days. But it's like, get to the place where the results that are coming out are exactly what you want, and then you can relax.
And it takes time. Over the time, as you mentioned, that you become efficient on that, but you gotta keep tweaking that on ongoing basis and build that into the team. How does where does that come from on a leadership standpoint? That's a lot of hard work from a leadership standpoint, Brett. As you gotta work hard at it on an ongoing basis. From a leaders, does that entails that they definitely have to skill up them, especially with the hybrid environment right now.
Inside, you bet. You can't let go. So who do you want to be in addition to what the company wants to be? In other words, if you have a vision for the company and it's only dollar signs, right? There's a whole lot of human stuff behind it. So the evolution of me is more important. Actually, let's put it this way. You can't grow a company past the limitations of the leader, period.
Very interesting. That's powerful. So how do these business leaders go about and work on themselves and find out what the limits, what they're trying to do? How do you increase the ceiling on those limits that, simply say, listen, I'm going after this goal. I may have to work on the ceilings I have, and I got to remove that.
Right. So I would look at it this way. What do you want? What do you want to achieve? Who are your heroes in whatever you're wanting to learn? If I want to be a better, honest person, who are the honest people that I want to have circle around me, right? That are in my inner circle, right? Or for me, it's like me. My heroes, some of them are Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. They're my heroes. I read about them so that I can bring that into my life. So go find heroes, study them, and find someone to mentor you if you want.
Yeah, mentoring is, I think, one of the missing element especially for me as well. A lot of business leaders trying to build the companies, because you need to surround yourself with this information and the positivity. So many distractions out there in a market, especially in a digital era where so many distractions. So you definitely got to focus and keep repeatedly keep yourself and merge yourself into the content and the value that what you're trying to build to, right?
Right. As we grow as people, as we evolve as people, and I think there's a design process buried in each human being, right? We're here to learn on Earth. The whole point of being on Earth and alive, I think, is, it's like I've had 3 ways of learning. I learned from whispers in my dreams, the things that talk to me at night, and in the middle of the day that pop in, right? My epiphanies, if you would. So whispers, messages that are like written on a wall somewhere, right? And then the other one is one brick wall at a time. Oh man, that was painful. Wake up, right? I've been through 2 marriages. I worked really hard at them. 2 divorces. That's not, and I'm ambitious and risk willing enough. I don't know how to say that actually, but I'm headed toward a 3rd marriage. So there we are.
Beautiful stuff. So you mentioned a little bit of your background already, Brett. Let's talk about your journey. What you've been through in a professional side, and how did you get involved in coaching people, helping people to achieve their goals, and build a leadership teams?
Well, first off, I'll honor my second ex-wife. She brought me an article in the newspaper, the local newspaper here in Portland, about a woman that had gone through Coach University. And at the time I was doing formulation consulting for my dad's company. So I was doing chemistry, but it was consulting. And so my wife brought me this article that said, Brad, here's the quote, Brad, you need to call these people, Coach University. You need to call these people. You're already doing this. You might as well get paid for what you're doing. So that was the spark, right? And I have always been, so my journey is this. I started out, my dad had a bachelor's in chemical engineering and a PhD in biochemistry, and he wanted to solve the world food problem, which was, people need protein as a core foundation. And so he taught me how to think like an engineer, And then we moved from Evansville, Indiana to Corvallis, Oregon, and, on the West Coast. And he was involved in the startup of 34 new companies. And in that, 3 of them are still running 50 years later, but 30 of them didn't work. A couple got sold off, but what that taught me, and every one of those stories came through the house. So what that taught me was, if you have all the pieces in place, it works. If you don't have all the pieces in place and the idea you have in your mind works or doesn't work, right? You'll either succeed or you won't. So I've gone back, I've kind of reviewed that process. I think there were like 8 or 9 that were good ideas that actually had a market, right? So first thing you do is look at the business model. Do I have to modify the business model, right? Do I have to pivot a little bit in order to hit more of the market? Every time we bring out a new product, we're pivoting the company a little bit, innovation-wise, in order to reach more market. That's a change in the business model slightly. So look at the business model. So my background was do evolution. So when my second ex-wife brought me that idea, I said, okay, let me work on that. I allowed myself a couple months to kind of build into it, but starting in July of '96, it's when I jumped into it. Was I good at sales? I was horrible at sales. So I learned how to do that. And I learned how to do marketing. And I've learned my way up into this process. But I have my clients and all the 30 different ways to kill a company in my mind, so that I've kept my clients, plus my master's, my MBA, and my bachelor's in business management, all my chemistry background, taught me how to look at things, look at the structure of things. And there's one more piece in my history that was significant. When I was an 18-year-old fall term freshman year at Oregon State, I developed a bleeding ulcer. Not good. When I got to the doctor in December, he said to me, gee, Brad, if you'd have waited 6 weeks to come see me, you'd have bled to death. I had no idea.
Wow.
Then he said to me, you'll never eat strawberries, corn, or lettuce, all things I like, ever again in your life. And my brain went, no, fat chance, buddy, that's not happening. Then he said, you have a psychosomatic disease. Your emotions affect the severity of your symptoms. And from that, I made the full-on commitment to conquer the disease by changing my internal emotional makeup. And that's why I watched character. That's why I watched me. I started me deeply, tracked my emotions, tracked which ones caused the bleeding, and then went back and rewired them. There are things we carry around from childhood, which is what this taught me, that interfere with our work. So part of the work I do with my clients is to talk to them about the frustrations and the patterns of frustrations they've had, not just in this business, but across their whole life. Not therapy, but it's honesty, clear down to the core. And then deeper than that, I started meditating 27 years ago. And what that taught me was to watch and be aware and be still and listen. Every one of us has epiphanies. And when they pop in, that's the deepest part of intuition. And as you meditate, you open up yourself to deeper, you rewire the brain, literally, so that it has more available bandwidth. And as you have more available bandwidth, more intuition shows up. The reason that I named, so the name of the company behind me, I just set this up. Is it backwards from your side?
No, I actually see. Yeah, no, I can't read it, but yeah, but I will put that at the bottom. I think intuitive training, right? Is that
right? Intuitive, no, I don't know. No. So Stellar Insight, the reason I renamed my company after my second divorce, Stellar Insight Inc., was because I realized what I sell is insight.
Got it.
With the proper insight, you won't hit brick walls. I don't like learning from those really, really painful experiences. It's too harsh. So
very interesting. What you're saying, that by changing the emotions and understanding yourself, you were able to deal with that disease that you were struggling with. That gotta be very powerful, that, just by changing your emotions and your approach to it with the meditation, you were able to, conquer that disease.
Yep. Yep. And the bleeding stopped about a year later. It went to, by 6 months it had gotten to intermittent. And then by a year or 2 years, it got down to where it was episodic, right? Like once or twice every other year. But the pain was there. And so eventually I figured out that two things. That's a whole story. But I went in with hypnosis and rewired a memory from about 10 months old, and that changing that to an adult perspective instead of a newborn, an infinite perspective. Within a year, all my symptoms were gone permanently. But I was 47 when that happened. But it took me that long to learn my way to that depth of experience. Can I speed that up for people? Yeah. So if you have anyone in your life or yourself have colitis as an issue, bleeding or pain, go find a medical hypnotherapist and they can heal you.
So the meditation you did, that allow you to look at that insight and give you control on emotions. Is that what was a tool they use?
Yep. That was part of the process. So what happens is the brain has 5 brainwave levels. Okay. And we have delta, which is the bottom 30 minutes of a 90-minute sleep cycle, and theta, which is most of the sleep cycle, right? And when we're born, those are the brain waves we operate in until we're about 5 or 6, when our analytical mind kicks in. Then we have in alpha, which is where we do daydreaming, right? And get our inspirations. And beta, where we do analytical thinking, words and numbers, okay? Gamma is a different level. And so when we go in with hypnosis and meditation, we train our brain to operate at those different deeper brainwave levels. And as a result of that, more of our inside process is available to us. So you learn more. And all you're doing is learning how to regulate, am I present or am I not present? There's 3 different types of meditation I would offer people. One is transcendental meditation, which I do and have done. One is self-realization fellowship by Paramahansa Yogananda. He wrote the autobiography of a yogi, which is a good book. And the third one is by synchronicity.org by a man whose name was Charles Cannon. And so he uses binaural beat, which trains your brain with audio waves to be in those deeper meditation states more easily. I went from 10 minutes a day counting breaths to an hour in about a week with the soundtracks.
Wow. So it let you get your thoughts together and let you focus on the problem you're trying to solve instead of just trying to look at on a very low level of theater. The deeper level you go in and solve those problems which you mentioned that instead of very interesting. I know Steve Jobs was big on a Yogananda. I think he did a camps there. He did a lot of camps there. Yogananda had passed away, but where his place was in India, Steve Jobs has gone and he's done a lot of camps there. And he spent a lot of time. And when he was making decisions about Apple, he was using some of those meditations to go through that stuff.
Well, I've learned something that's important because he's one of my invention heroes, not necessarily good at character all the way through, but good at invention. So intuition is how we open ourselves up as meditation, and that is reverie. The other thing that I did was I worked graveyard for a while, and I'd go to sleep at 6 a.m. and do my best to sleep through the barking dogs at 11 o'clock in the morning, because they kick in about 10 or 11. And so I spent time being aware, trying to get back to sleep, but just being aware. And so that was kind of a precursor to my meditation. Those taught me how to be aware. So when you wake up, put it this way, if you have something you have to solve, write it down before you go to sleep. And if there's a blank space in it, then hold that blank space open and say, I need this filled in. Go to sleep and wake up with that question in your mind. And almost always you can train yourself eventually into having the solution when you want it. Sometimes it takes a couple days, but I trained myself into being able to, when I was doing formulation work, I'd literally there was no more road in front of me. There was no way to go forward. And I would stop, map out everything I knew, map out the space I didn't know, and go take a nap. Wake up from a 15-minute nap, I'd have the solution, one way or the other.
So when you sleep and you're thinking about that, your subconscious mind, you're still going through that question and trying to solve the problem, I think, when you're gone, right?
Yeah, well, your subconscious never goes to sleep. It's always on. This part might, right? This part does. The person consciousness goes to sleep, but the rest of it doesn't.
So you can solve a problem while you're sleeping, and because your brain's still working on that level to solve the problem.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna lay this out. I'm gonna challenge people here. Our design is to evolve from the lowly, single body, unconscious human beings we are to being awake and eventually grow to the place where we're omniscient, literally. But I believe, and have had conversations with them, every one of those stars and the pictures behind me is a single being. And then they have consciousness. And in order to be able to do that and have all the things they planned for all the beings that live inside them, right? Mm-hmm. Our job is to learn how to grow from barely conscious to fully conscious. That's why meditation helps. This is just a playground, kindergarten, if you would, mm-hmm. Preschool, grade school. This is grade school for humans and souls. That's what I think.
Very interesting. See, there's so much to learn from you, Brett. Definitely, I learned in short time so much from you, and definitely business leader like myself. We all trying to solve a problem, and we sometimes there's so many blind spots that we overlooking, and that's where we need people like you around us simply help us to navigate the blind spot and help out. Deal with some of those challenges that we probably don't see it or we don't look at that way, especially that intuitive side you mentioned that we need to solve a problem a little better that way. We can all use help. So talk about your stellar training, right? Stellar insight. So what do you do and how do you help our business leaders there, Brad?
So when I take on somebody, first I have to like them. I don't work with people that are jerks, right?
Nobody wants to work with that.
No. So I like with people. I want to work with ambitious people. That's my first requirement. Ambitious and curious, okay? If they're ambitious and curious, it means they're also relatively kind. Those are my requirements. I work with them for an hour a week. If they're an individual client, an hour a week, 4 weeks a month. And we learn from each other and then we collaborate from each other. And the other thing that I have 3 other things I'm running. So individual coaching I do. I'm starting a group coaching group because a group of CEOs in a room and all of us learning from each other with a guide through that process, which I've learned how to do, right? Mm-hmm. That would be brilliant. So a CEO group coaching, that will be fun. I haven't got it started yet. And then the other thing I'm doing is I have a master class that I'm going to offer, and I think I've adjusted it slightly. It takes about a year and a half to get to the place where you're standing in the middle of a room. This is what happened with me. Standing in the middle of a room, it was a laboratory at that time, and I realized I could carry 6 times as much information in my mind and analyze it and correlate it than I could any other moment before my life, right? So, I don't really actually remember. I think I was like 37, I think, at the time. No. Mm-hmm. 35. And so I'm sitting in the middle of the lab. You wake up and you realize you have more capacity. So that takes time. It takes meditation. It takes work. I'm offering a class that I call Deep Intuition as a master class. That's on my website. People can go to it. Mm-hmm. They can set up a time to talk to me. It's on my website.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, I'm going to include a link to all that stuff below the video as well, so they can click a button and connect with you. What is the intuitive training? You also have a one, there's first of all, there's a great podcast series on your website as well, right? There's a lot of great discussion. I looked at a couple of them, great discussions. People can explore all the resources on your website as well. What is intuitive training? And you were talking about visionary leader and intuitive training. What is that training about?
Well, first off, I described the actual energetic structures that are behind being a physical human, right?
Yeah.
I take them through that and I will point them through. So if you have an epiphany, you've had the highest level you can, right? Where everything shows up and that whole idea pops into place. That's the highest level you can reach and still only be a physical human. Beyond that, you can go above that. And then you've had experiences standing outside. I've had those. Standing outside your physical body, looking at your physical body and watching it do. I had one where I got to bilocate. I was outside, I was inside. I realized that, and I waved my hand at myself physically. That was pretty I want to teach people who they are. That's what I do. And in the process of teaching who they are, then I teach them the practices they need to change their neurological structures, their brain, and also the whole body, so that they feel more available to the rest of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. So let me ask you this. So you mentioned about the visionary leader on your website. How do you define visionary leader? If you can define that for audience, what do you mean by visionary leaders? What do they have to have?
They have to have access to their intuition, okay? Which that means is they can see the whole picture all at once, and they can work with all the little parts inside that. In other words, how I stumbled into this was a number of years ago, I had to rebuild a bathroom floor. And when I went in and looked at it, it hadn't been plumbed since the 30s. So it hadn't had a bathroom in it for about 40 years. And so the floor was off level by 2.5 inches, right? 2.5 inches in one direction and about 5/8 of an inch in another. And I had to figure out how to balance it out. So as I woke up in the morning, I laid it out in my mind and I realized I had a kinesthetic modeling capability. I could hold out a 3-dimensional model in my mind and kinesthetically feel what worked and what didn't work. When you're intuitive as a leader, however your intuition works, whether it's in a kinesthetic, which is the feel, right, or visual, that will let you work through the whole picture from the 60,000 foot level down to the 5 foot level and focus on each one of the parts and make sure they work together. You will be able to do that. That's a visionary leader.
Mm-hmm. Can you train that? Is that skill could be trainable, or is it either you have it or you don't have it?
Nah, it's all trainable. Every human being on the face of the planet have the capability of doing, and I apologize, but everything that all the mystical leaders have done for us, all those miracles, every one of us has that capability. Our job is to grow up and be able to do it. That's our job.
Wow. No, definitely. I don't have a lot of experience on this, but one thing I know that, I've been building a business for the last 10, 11 years, Brad, is, when I started a business, I thought it was all about processes and systems and all about building those things to grow a company. But I learned that over the time that more I worked on myself, the business kind of grew as a effect of it. So, more, I can now focus on myself as I learned different skill set, as I grew as a person. Business was the outcome of it, and it kind of grew. So, a testament to what you just simply saying, and I think that it's so important for business leaders to look into that and grow themselves, personal development. Definitely, the business is gonna be outcome of that as you go as a person.
Yeah, I want everybody to remember, you cannot grow a business beyond the limitations of the leader. If you're stuck at a brick wall, you have to grow in order for the company to grow. Revenue will follow. Revenue is a symptom of your growth.
Very interesting. Listen, I enjoy our discussion. Definitely, business leader watching who are listening, I'll definitely encourage people to connect with you, reach out to you, have a conversation. I learned so much. I'm sure everybody's gonna learn so much from you, and who knows where the conversation can take them. So where can people find you? How can they connect with you, Brad?
My website is Stellar Insight Inc. INC. com. Okay. And I'm available. You can go to that website. My email's there, my phone number's there. You can call me if you want, but send me an email. We'll set up a Zoom link. We can talk this way, you know. We can find out if we actually like each other or not, and then how ambitious we each are. I don't want to scale back my ambition to match yours, right?
Yeah, I'm going to include a link to your website and the LinkedIn page below the video as well. I thought there's a lot of resources people can check out. They can connect with you. But I want to acknowledge your time. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I learned so much. I'm sure people who connect with you, they're going to learn so much from you as well. And, I encourage everybody to go out and go to your website and connect with you, check out some resources and set up a call with you and go from there.
Thank you. I've enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Brian.
You bet. Take care.